This webinar is the fifth in a series of webinars on the evaluation process. The earlier webinars have covered topics such as an introduction to evaluation, planning your intervention, doing your intervention, and planning your evaluation. It might be useful to you to watch those before you watch this webinar. You might also like to download or print a copy of the handout from our website, which has the key information from this webinar to save you from having to take lots of notes. This webinar will cover how to decide who should be doing the evaluation, how to choose an external evaluator, and finally I will explain how to write a research specification for your external evaluator. When you are planning your evaluation, one of the first things you will need to consider is who it will be who will carry out the evaluation. This is because in some situations you might need some help with carrying out your evaluation. If you do not have any evaluation experts working within your organisation, you might think about whether an external evaluator or evaluation team could carry out the evaluation of the project for you. Before you decide who should be carrying out your evaluation, there are several things to think about. The first thing to consider is cost. As to hire an external evaluator, you will need to have a budget large enough to allow you to do so. You will also need to consider time, because evaluation is a lengthy process. You might decide to hire an external evaluator simply because you do not have the time to carry it out in-house. Next, you will need to think about the complexity of the evaluation you need. Sometimes the evaluation you need to carry out could be too complex for you to do in-house, particularly if you have no evaluation experts. This would mean that you are likely to need to seek expert advice. Finally, you should think about bias. If you have designed the intervention and delivered it yourself, you may inadvertently influence the results of the evaluation. If you have designed an intervention and you need to evaluate it yourself, steps should be taken to minimise potential bias. For example, you might choose to issue questionnaires that are returned anonymously by post, rather than carrying out face-to-face interviews with other team members or those who have attended your intervention. So, if you've considered these factors and have decided that you will need to hire an external evaluator, you might wonder who an external evaluator could be. An external evaluator could be someone who works for a research company. They could also be someone who works at a university, or it could be another member of staff who was not involved in your intervention. When you are choosing an evaluator, you might decide to ask more than one evaluator to provide a proposal. If this is the case, you will need to think carefully about how you will assess each proposal. For example, you might decide that you would like to assess each proposal on value for money, the experience of the team, and the methodological approach they suggest. You will also need to consider the balance between quality and price. If you feel unsure about how much you should be spending on your evaluation, it might help to know that it is advised that you set aside 10% of your budget for evaluating your project. If you work for a local authority, you should consider talking to the team who deals with tendering, as they will be able to advise you on how to write your research specification. Once you have decided that you would like to hire an external evaluator, it can be difficult to choose which evaluator you would like to hire. Alongside the proposal, there are a few things that you should bear in mind when deciding who you would like to evaluate your intervention. These considerations could include evaluation experience and expertise. It is ideal to look for someone who has knowledge in your intervention's specific area and has plenty of experience in carrying out the methods you would like to use in your evaluation. For example, you might like to select an evaluator who has plenty of experience of conducting focus groups or interviews. You should also consider the evaluator's quantitative and qualitative research skills and their knowledge of the context of your project. Finally, you will need to consider their cultural and contextual competency, such as their language skills and sensitivity. It is important to consider the experience that someone has working with a group similar to those you will be studying. This is because it is important that your evaluator can demonstrate an understanding of the people they will be working with. Before you hire someone, you will need to do your homework. You should consider looking at an evaluator's past work to make sure that you are comfortable that they are competent and capable of leading the process. It is also advised that you contact an evaluation consultant as early as possible, as good evaluators are likely to be very busy. Finally, it is a good idea to talk to a colleague who has previously evaluated a project about which evaluator you should use, as they may have someone they could recommend to you. Once you have decided which evaluator you would like to hire, the next stage is to provide them with a research specification if you have not done so already. This might sound daunting, but it is likely that you have all of the information needed to produce the specification already, although it might not all be in one place. In short, the specification should outline the aims and objectives of the project and what you would like to measure in your evaluation. If you have a method in mind, you might also like to guide the evaluator towards this. Where possible, you should also provide a timeline for the evaluation. This should have time built in for any clarifications with the evaluator and time to sign off fieldwork materials before the evaluation starts. If you are struggling to design a research specification, you could use these headings as a structure. Firstly, you should have a project title. You should then provide a summary of your project. This is likely to include a description of who is commissioning the work, what you want to be evaluated, and the timescale in which this is to be completed. There should then be an introduction to the project, detailing what the intervention is and why the project is being evaluated. Following this, the aims and objectives can be outlined. This will allow the evaluator to choose the best methodological approach to take when evaluating the intervention. Next, you should have a methodology section. You can be relatively prescriptive about the methodology here if you have a fixed idea of what should be undertaken. For example, you might say tenderers are invited to propose a work programme designed to meet the above objectives, requirements and the timetable outlined below. Alternatively, you can keep it open for the evaluator to propose. For example, you might write, tenderers should include a time schedule for the work that identifies the main tasks and key milestones that will be used to monitor and report on progress. Following this, in the analysis and reporting section, you should specify if there is any specific analysis required. For example, you might require quantitative data by gender-specific groups. You should also include the requirements of your report in this section. For example, you might state that you require a report of at least 25 pages in length with an executive summary. There should also be a section with a timeline. It is important to be honest if you are restricted with time so that the evaluator is able to complete the evaluation promptly. You can then detail your budget. Following this, quality assurances should be outlined. For example, you might decide you would not like to hire an evaluator who has less than 3 years' experience in the role, or someone who does not have any experience of evaluating a similar intervention. Data protection policies should also be described. At this point, it would be advisable to go and talk to someone working in HR at your organisation, as they will be able to explain the minimum standard of data protection you need. Finally, you need to outline the evaluation criteria of the proposals to make the selection of an evaluator fair. You will need to explain the criteria that you are making your decision based on. It would be useful to break this down into percentages so that potential evaluators can see which parts of the proposal are more heavily weighted. In this example, the research specification states that work plan and cost are the most important elements in selecting an evaluator. At this point, it is also important to remember that you can ask an evaluator to provide a paper copy of the research proposal, a presentation, or for larger evaluation projects, you may ask for both. This webinar has covered how to decide who should do the evaluation, how to choose an evaluator, and how to write a research specification. If you need any more help or advice on how to hire an external evaluator, you can email me at rneedham@rospa.com. I hope you found the webinar useful. There are 10 more webinars covering each stage of the evaluation process on the help and guidance page of our website.